So cameras on, cameras off. Should students be told they have to turn their cameras on when they take part in online classes? Well, I think I've got an answer for you. So this question sits behind a debate that's been happening for a while among those who teach live sessions online. But it became a much more common debate during the worst years of the COVID pandemic, when universities moved all of their teaching online. And the question was mostly asked by lecturers, and many answered it with yes, answering, yes, it should be mandated. Students should turn their damn cameras on. And there are two main reasons that are commonly given for this. The first and the main reason is about student engagement. The argument is quite simple. It is that students who don't have their cameras on are less engaged. The second reason is that it's a terrible experience for the lecturer if their students don't have their cameras turned on, because you lose all of that ambient feedback, those indicators that people are listening, that people are interested in what you're saying. But it's also the way that, as a lecturer, you can check you're making sense. If your students look confused, you can rephrase what you're saying and bring in examples to make things clearer. But it's also a terrible experience to be lecturing online when students have their cameras turned off, because you're literally being blanked. It's that feeling when you're talking to someone who starts to look off into the distance and then they walk off as you're in mid-sentence. It's not nice. It's depressing and it's exhausting. But there are reasons why students should have their cameras turned off. So let's get to those. First off, some students don't have a webcam, so they can't be on webcam. That was particularly the case during the COVID pandemic, when webcams were in high demand, and in some places you just couldn't actually get hold of one, even if you could afford one. Also, some students might not have fast and reliable internet connections, so it's not a good experience streaming video and having your camera on at the same time. But even if a student has a webcam and has good internet connection, they might not want to be on camera because they're embarrassed. Maybe they don't live in the nicest house. Maybe they've been so busy they haven't had a chance to clean up their room. Maybe it's not safe to show where they are. And that can be particularly the case for people who have been in or still in violent relationships. Maybe there's stuff happening in the house that they don't want others to see. Maybe they're self-conscious over how they look. And we can look pretty damned awful when we're using cheap web cameras and poor lighting. Hey, I look pretty damn awful with an expensive camera and good lighting. So I don't have that excuse. But maybe another reason is that the student might not have enough privacy to use a webcam. So there can be lots of reasons for having your camera off. But do those reasons trump the reasons for having your camera on? The main one being the problem of it negatively impacting student engagement. Well, here is where it gets interesting, because we need to ask whether we actually know that it does have that impact. So what research has been done suggests that when a student has their camera off, it has no negative impact on their engagement in an online lecture setting. If anything, it can help with engagement. And that's because the student can be listening to a lecture without the distraction of worrying about how they look on camera. So it does seem to be mostly an issue more for the lecturer than for the student. You know, that second reason of it being a depressing and exhausting experience for the lecturer. Now, is that enough of a reason to insist on students turning their cameras on? Well, perhaps it's not enough of a reason to insist that cameras are on, but maybe it's enough to encourage people to turn on their cameras. But lecturers are professionals. They're skilled in public speaking. Now, when you're a public speaker, unfortunately, that means that you're used to addressing an audience where some people are switched off. This, for an academic, this happens particularly at international conferences where half your audience might be jet-lagged and they're falling asleep during presentations, or they're in the wrong room because they got lost and they realize that halfway through your talk and they get up. So they realize they're in the wrong room and they just get up and walk out. You know, it can be quite a shocker when that first happens to you, but you get used to it. So most lecturers are kind of used to giving lectures where not everyone is fully switched on, so to speak. But what about teaching that isn't in that traditional lecture format? What about teaching that's fully interactive, where students are expected to talk to each other and the lecturer is just there to facilitate those discussions? Well, there things change, because in those sessions, it's the student who gets snubbed when people's cameras are off. It's the student who has that depressing and exhausting experience. Also, building trust and rapport with your classmates is much harder to do when their cameras are off. Having cameras on helps students identify with each other, which is a really, really important part of the educational experience. We call it peer-based learning, which is one of the most effective ways of learning. So in summary, yes, students should be told to turn on their cameras when it's an interactive classroom because of the negative impact their camera being off has on other classmates, and because it damages their ability to build good relationships with their classmates. The only good reason for not having your camera on in those interactive sessions is that you don't have a camera, you don't have a webcam, or your internet connection doesn't support you streaming video, or if there's some serious privacy issues that you're having to deal with. But if it's your traditional lecture where the person doing most of the talking is the lecturer, then I think no mandate required. There, I think students should just be encouraged rather than instructed to turn their camera on, and to give us lecturers a smile and a wave to let us know that, they're listening. And also, they can gently let us know if we aren't making much sense. Okay, so that's all for this one. Till next time. Ta-da.